to postpone the counting of electoral votes. At least a dozen have signed a letter directed to the vice president asking him for an official delay, and more senators might join. Senator Brendan Beach told the Epoch Times they want a delay of 10 to 12 days. They planned to pass the letter to Pence on Tuesday, a day ahead of the vote count. Beach says they called for the delay so they have more time to investigate and scan ballots. The senator said he also wrote an individual letter to Pence as a member of the state's Judiciary Subcommittee. Beach suggested senators from other states were doing the same. Beach also said he has been inundated with calls from disenfranchised voters who suspect foul play in the election. Meanwhile, senior legal advisor to the Trump campaign, Jenna Ellis, also suggested that Pence delay certifying the votes on January 6th. Speaking on Just the News television show, The Water Cooler, Ellis said, "What Mike Pence could do and what he should do, in fact, is to direct a question back to the state legislatures." She suggested Pence ask legislatures in the 6 contested states to say which candidate's slate of electors should be approved.
Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri says a group made threats outside his home last night while his wife and baby were home alone.
Senator Josh Hawley says a group of Antifa members threatened his family at their home in Washington on Monday night while he was away in Missouri. He says his wife and newborn daughter were alone inside the house when the group arrived. He stated they screamed threats, vandalized, and tried to pound open their door. In response, he says he will not be intimidated. A group posted a video of the incident to Twitter, claiming responsibility. The group called Shutdown DC is affiliated with the far-left Antifa network. Hawley recently made headlines as the first senator to announce he plans to object on January 6th when electoral votes are counted. Shutdown DC later issued a statement on their website saying this was the reason they went to his house. They say Hawley plans to derail Congress's acceptance of Joe Biden's election win on January 6th.
Speaking on Fox News Monday, Hawley said the outcome of the January 6th joint session of Congress will decide who the next president will be. He says his constituents have raised major concerns about the integrity of the election, and they're expecting him to raise those concerns when the electoral votes are counted. Both President Trump and Joe Biden made trips to Georgia yesterday on the eve of the Senate runoffs. Trump assured Georgians that their vote is crucial to the fabric of the nation, although allegations of voter fraud remain under investigation in the state. He says his team will not settle for a rigged election, and they are continuing to pull out evidence linked to irregularities. NTD's Melina Weiskup reports.
President Trump ending his speech saying that he thinks the only way Americans can fight back against the forces controlling the country is to vote in these Senate runoffs.
The only way to combat the Democrat fraud is to flood your polling places with a historic tidal wave of Republican voters tomorrow.
He said David and Kelly fight for him, and Trump actually invited Loeffler up to the stage where she publicly announced she will object to the Electoral College votes.
On January 6th, I will object to the Electoral College vote.
However, Perdue wasn't able to come tonight, but he did submit a video with his words to Americans, his last words ahead of these Senate runoffs. And among the reasons Trump gave for voting for Loeffler and Perdue in the Senate runoff, he said that if they don't, America may be too far gone to ever get back.
The Democrats will surrender the entire U.S. manufacturing industry to China.
Saying that they're fighting communism and Marxism. Don Jr., who actually spoke ahead of Trump, pointed to the same issue.
Because you know they're trying to do the opposite of what would be good for you, for us, and for America. Right? That's their thing. They push the Chinese communist propaganda talking points because they want that money. They don't care so much about America.
And of course, Trump dedicated a chunk of his time to really talking about what happened in the November 3rd election, really giving those numbers and statistics that his team has been putting together and documenting for the past couple of weeks.
There's a lot of things that are up in the air. The Constitution is going to get tested like it's never been tested before. People are going to learn an awful lot about the 12th Amendment in the next 2 weeks.
Look, there's a lot of stuff that the public has been teased, and I've seen some of this stuff with Sydney's case. Iran and China totally had a role in compromising our elections, and unfortunately, our intelligence apparatus hasn't been fast with getting that information to the American public. Anybody can guess why.
Trump also pointed to some specific numbers that show illegal ballots cast here in Georgia. For example, he said more than 2,000 votes were cast by felons, while more than 4,000 cast by out-of-state people, and more than 18,000 cast by people registered at vacant commercial addresses. And Trump says that his team has even more allegations of voter fraud to lay out on January 6th and encourage these Georgians to get out there in D.C. and be a part of this historic moment. Reporting in Dalton, Georgia, Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Presidential candidate Joe Biden says Americans will see $2,000 stimulus checks if Georgia Democrats Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff are elected in today's Senate runoff election.
And the debate over $2,000 isn't some abstract debate in Washington. It's about real lives, your lives, the lives of good, hard-working Americans. And if you're like millions of Americans all across this country, you need the money, you need the help, and you need it now.
Joe Biden speaking at a drive-in rally in Georgia. Democrats passed a bill late last year to send $2,000 checks to most Americans. The bill was supported by President Trump, but was blocked by Senate Republicans. Ossoff and Warnock are trying to unseat Republican Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue. Both Loeffler and Perdue have expressed their support for the $2,000 checks. The bill in question would have increased the check amount from the $600 already approved. It would also raise the amount parents received for each child. Georgia's Democratic Senate candidate Raphael Warnock says he is against defunding the police. But just one day before the runoff, Project Veritas released a video that shows otherwise. NTD's Christina Kim has the story.
A video from Project Veritas shows that staffers for Georgia's Democratic Senate candidate Raphael Warnock say the Reverend is for defunding the police. This just one day before Georgia's Senate runoff elections. According to two campaign staffers, like Warnock's finance assistant, he is for defunding the police, he just doesn't use the rhetoric.
Avoids using defunding the police because he knows that the Republicans are going to try to grab onto an attack.
Of course,
right?
Of course.
But in reality, his whole platform with police reform is along the lines of the same people who are saying police.
Gotcha.
Just not using the same rhetoric, you know?
Another campaign member was recorded on tape saying that most police officers are bad.
You know, police officers are not all good. You know what I'm saying? Most of them are bad. We know that.
When asked if Warnock was on the side of defunding police officers, she said absolutely.
Absolutely.
I do not want to defund the police.
This directly contradicts Warnock's public stance, where he has stated multiple times that he is not in favor of defunding the police. In October of 2020, he said, "Let me be clear, I oppose defunding the police," and said, "We have to respect law enforcement enough to hold them accountable." On Monday, Warnock's campaign repeated that message in an emailed statement to the Epoch Times.
And they haven't seen any relief in months.
In the two Senate races in Georgia, Warnock is seeking to replace Kelly Loeffler as senator, and Jon Ossoff is seeking to replace David Perdue in a race that looks set to determine the Senate's balance of power. Christina Kim, NTD News.
Washington police arrested the head of the Proud Boys on suspicion of burning a Black Lives Matter banner. The banner was torn down from a historically black church in Washington last month. Enrique Tarrio was charged with destruction of property for the incident. It's not clear if Tarrio was directly involved or is seeking to take the blame for actions by his membership. Police arrested Tarrio after he arrived in Washington ahead of the January 6th protests. A police spokesman said Tarrio was in possession of 2 high-capacity firearm magazines at the time of his arrest, so now faces weapons charges as well. Washington has some of the strictest gun laws in the United States. Individuals are prohibited from openly carrying weapons or possessing handguns without a legal license. Without a local license, that is. And a new analysis shows that hundreds of thousands of votes were removed from President Trump in Pennsylvania. The Data Integrity Group provided the data exclusively to NTD and the Epoch Times. Grace Coulter has more on their findings.
The Data Integrity Group says it has found that more than 423,000 votes were removed from President Trump in Pennsylvania. Over 204,000 were removed from the election day total, and over 218,000 from the absentee total. Their findings show that votes were removed from the totals in at least 15 counties. The data integrity group includes scientists, engineers, and machine learning experts working together to check for manipulation of data in the 2020 election. They provided a video exclusively to NTD and Epoch Times to illustrate some of their findings.
We can clearly see that both absentee and election day votes do not follow normal incremental behavior in Chester County. Trump loses almost 26,000 from his election day and nearly 50,000 from his absentee. He later loses over 9,000 and then again over 6,000 from his election day updates. Again, this is something that should never occur in an additive voting process.
He says the way an incremental chart should look is from left to right. Each vote total update should stay flat or increase only. A decrease means votes have been removed. Here's another example of irregular activity in the election voting data from Lehigh County.
We can see Trump out of the gates receives over 66,000 votes, which are then taken away from his counts. He then receives 3 incremental updates to get back to over 66,000. But if this were some kind of human error, wouldn't the total be updated directly back to the value that was removed? Why are updates of around 7,000, 18,000, 38,000 recorded? And why aren't the amounts not equal to what was taken away? What's going on here?
They say that any vote switching that's been caught is attributed to human error by the state and election officials. But the group says they still have many questions and are asking why Pennsylvania officials are refusing to look into the apparent irregularities.
There are still errors and deserve a second review and thorough analysis with forensic audits to find the answers. Our elected officials are telling us to move on, but don't these 400,000 errors deserve a more detailed and legitimate explanation?
The group is urging the state to authorize forensic audits to uphold election integrity. They say it is irresponsible to certify the results before the alleged errors and anomalies are explained. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
Congress has decided on the rules for how the Electoral College vote will be counted on January 6th.
The guidance was introduced by Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. He says the chambers will meet in a joint session on January 6th, presided over by Vice President Mike Pence. As president of the Senate, Vice President Pence will open all the certificates and papers purporting to be certificates of electoral votes. 7 states sent alternate electors and certificates, meaning the state has certificates for both Joe Biden and President Trump. The certificates and papers will be opened, presented, and acted upon in alphabetical order, starting with Alabama. At this point, at least 12 Republican senators and over 50 representatives will object to some of the certificates due to election irregularities and allegations of fraud. That would trigger a withdrawal from the joint session, leading to a 2-hour debate followed by votes in each chamber. A challenge would go through if there is a majority vote from both the House and the Senate. But even supporters find the scenario unlikely, since Democrats who control the House and Senate Republican leadership, including McConnell, have expressed disapproval with a plan to object. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said in a letter to her colleagues on Sunday that the objections could happen, but at the end of the day, Biden will be declared the next president. Some Republicans are focusing on Pence's role in the proceedings, arguing that he has the exclusive authority to decide how to deal with the dueling electors. Mike Pence's chief of staff, Mark Short, said that Vice President Pence shares the concerns of millions of Americans about voter fraud and irregularities in the last election. He said Pence welcomes the efforts to raise objections and bring forward evidence on January 6th. Christina Kim, NTD News.
Words like father and mother could very likely become a thing of the past inside the walls of the Capitol building. Certain leaders in the House are looking to stop the use of language based on gender.
Leaders in the House announced a rules package to the 117th Congress that includes a proposal to use gender-inclusive language. That means words like father, mother, son, daughter, and more would be banned. They'd be replaced with parent, child, sibling, parent-sibling, and so on. The new rule is meant to be inclusive to Congress members who don't fall into traditional gender orientations. With the re-election of Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House, chances for the new rule are even higher. Pelosi was one of the officials behind the proposal. Rules Committee Chairman James McGovern was another. Other Congress members are changing how they use common terms already. Representative Emanuel Cleaver added something extra at the end of the opening prayer for the 117th Congress.
Brahma and God known by many names, by many different faiths. A man and a woman.
The word amen originates from the Hebrew language, meaning it is so or so be it, and has nothing to do with gender. Representative Pete Stauber from Minnesota opposed the proposal of the new rule and argued it eliminates debate and stifles freedom of speech. The representative replied, "As a proud father, husband, and son, I will be voting no." Don Tran, NTD News.
Mike Pompeo says the true face of the Chinese Communist Party has been exposed, and he believes no one will go back to the previous status quo.
Mike Pompeo sat down with the Epoch Times American Thought Leaders program. The host asked him why it took so long for the U.S. to sanction the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, for human rights violations against the meditation group Falun Gong.
You go back all the way to Tiananmen Square. We've known the nature of this regime. And frankly, freedom-loving people across the world have known the nature of authoritarian regimes throughout history, and yet we ignored it.
He says President Trump recognized that the CCP is up to no good.
And we took our eye off this enormous threat. And now it's now upon us. It's now inside the gates. The Chinese Communist Party is here in America, and the Trump administration has begun in every dimension to turn the ship in the right direction to get America to once again do the right thing and protect itself from this communist threat in China.
The host asked Pompeo why he puts a focus on religious freedom.
It's at the center of every civilization. This idea that human beings have inherent dignity because of their humanness. And if you get that piece wrong, bad things flow from that.
He says there are examples of what the CCP is doing to ethnic minorities and Christians throughout China.
These things that are fundamental affronts to human dignity are something that is a hallmark of authoritarian regimes, and General Secretary Xi Jinping is no different. He knows that he has to extend ever-increasing power and control in order to maintain his capacity to rule, and that shuts out the important space that religious freedom should have for every human being in the world, and we've done our
Pompeo says now is the time to stand up for freedom and liberty, to stop the Chinese Communist Party from expanding its control, or future generations will live in a very different world.
And just ahead, more resources are launching to help victims of human trafficking. A new website is making outreach more accessible as part of a White House action plan to fight abuse crimes. And Californians continue to join freedom rallies in the state, even over the New Year weekend. Attendees say they're hopeful for this week's joint session results. Find out more after the break.
It's just clear as day. The media, whether it's broadcast, cable, or print media, become extremely biased. And I started looking online for alternative ways to get information. And I saw an ad for a free trial. And I looked at it and I said, Epoch Times. I mean, come on, this is end of days type of stuff. I mean, what are they going to be talking about here? And I said, well, it's a free trial. Let me dig in. Is it giving me both sides? Is it giving me an objective point of view here? I have looked for opportunities to see where they might be biased, and I don't find it. It has given me a level of trust in media that I didn't think I'd ever get back. I love the Epoch Times because it has renewed my faith in the idea that a reliable, responsible, non-biased source of information is available. And I can say that I love it because of that.
The U.S. government has launched a new website with resources for victims of human trafficking. It's part of President Trump's action plan to combat these crimes. Trump signed the plan back in October. The interagency effort includes funding opportunities, victim outreach, public awareness efforts, and education. According to the White House, 5,000 human traffickers were arrested in the last 3 years. It's a global problem. At any given time, nearly 25 million people worldwide are victims of human trafficking. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says the state has found its first case of the more contagious UK strain of the CCP virus. It raises concerns about hospital capacity if it spreads rapidly in the state. Cuomo says a man in his 60s living in a town north of Albany has the new strain. He's currently in recovery. The man had not traveled recently, suggesting community spread is possibly taking place. New York State has carried out 5,000 tests for the new strain and so far has only found this one case. Cuomo says it could be a game changer if the new strain increases hospitalizations and forces regions to close down. Los Angeles ambulance crew members are now instructed not to transport patients with little chance of survival to local hospitals. That's as ICUs near capacity across the county, that is. According to county health data, there were just 17 adult ICU beds available as of Monday evening. Due to the shortage, a directive from the country's emergency medical services agency says ambulance crew members should no longer bring patients to hospitals if their hearts have stopped and resuscitation attempts failed. The patient may be transported to a county hospital if he or she stabilizes after the efforts of resuscitation. That's according to the Los Angeles Times. California has seen back-to-back election integrity rallies in recent weeks, with several Stop the Steal rallies in the north and south of the state.
A crowd of rally-goers gathered in downtown Los Gatos, California on Saturday. There were music, booths, flags, signs, and speakers. The event began at 10 a.m. and ended around 2 p.m. The participants showed support for the president, including a former police officer who is running for California governor in 2022.
No other president has dealt with what he has to deal with, and he's still got work done, and he's still focusing on the Constitution. And that is what we need here in California.
There's so much truth out there that we are just not getting today.
Many attendees also expressed discontent with the lockdown orders.
They should not be punishing all the healthy people and taking away their jobs and their income, because that leads to increased suicide rates, alcoholism, and many more health problems.
Even if you don't like Trump, it's not even about Trump anymore. This is about evil versus good. This is about saving our country and not becoming a communist country. And then our small businesses, that's a big problem.
I know history, so I know communism never works, and all these people who say they're socialists don't understand the history, that it's basically the same thing.
In Los Angeles, several attendees rallied at Huntington Beach. They are worried that a stolen election means the country would be heading to communism.
All the Vietnamese came from a communist country and all that stuff, and they don't want communists here. And I'm fully behind them and all that as well, because that's why I call my brothers and sisters, because we're all Americans, and don't look at each other by our color of our skins. We're Americans.
South Vietnam, 1975, North Vietnam, they took over, communists took over, South Vietnam, and we try to escape by boat. We don't care. We die, or we got in jail, or we got sued. They know we escape from Vietnam by boat. But the community, they see you, right? They shoot you, they kill you, they put you in jail. No, justice. That's the way, we don't like it. And my father, they know the communists very well. From 1954, we moved, and once again, second time, right, 1975, we go.
Attendees said they are excited and feel anxious for the results on January 6th. Some of those who aren't going to Washington, D.C. plan to go to Sacramento to rally this Wednesday. NTD News, California.
Americans' distrust of mass media has reached a record high. 33% of those polled by Gallup saying they have no confidence at all in the media. But that's in contrast to Democrats' increasing levels of trust in the media. Gallup reports that Republican confidence in the media has plummeted, while Democratic Party supporters' trust in the media has risen dramatically. Democrats' trust over the preceding 4 years has been among the highest Gallup has measured for any party in the past 2 decades. The partisan divide over the reliability of the media swelled to a record 63 points. A mere 10% of Republicans surveyed said they had a great deal or a fair amount of trust in the media, compared to 73% of Democrats. The massive gap between supporters of the two parties is the largest Gallup has recorded since it started asking respondents the question in the 1970s. And coming up, an analyst says China may have sided with the Taliban to stir up trouble for the U.S. and Afghanistan. This on the heels of unconfirmed intelligence that China offered to pay insurgents to kill Americans. And Beijing is interfering in U.S. property sales in Hong Kong. It's raising concerns about the financial hub status as an international player. That and more after the break.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritang omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritang green vegetable omega-3. Eat 2 a day and you'll feel brand new!
The New York Stock Exchange is scrapping its plan to delist 3 Chinese telecom companies with ties to the Chinese military. The move marks a sudden policy reversal. The Stock Exchange announced the news Monday. That's after it said on December 31st it was in the process of delisting the 3 state-owned companies, China Mobile, China Telecom, and China Unicom. Trump issued an executive order on November 12, 2020. It bans U.S. companies tied to the Chinese military. The 3 telecom companies were among 35 Chinese companies identified by the Pentagon as having links to China's army. The Chinese regime is known to use companies to strengthen its military firepower. According to an analyst, China may have sided with the Taliban to create trouble for the U.S. in Afghanistan. This on the heels of unconfirmed intelligence that China offered to pay insurgents to kill Americans.
An analyst says China is involved in the Afghan war on the side of the Taliban. His source tells him China is known to sell equipment to local insurgents. This as recent news reports that China may pay fighters in Afghanistan to kill American soldiers. Plus headlines about Chinese spies operating in the Central Asian country, making contacts with local terrorist groups.
China is really part of the problem in Afghanistan.
Dr. Anders Corr is publisher of the Journal of Political Risk and founder of Core Analytics, which provides strategic analyses of international politics. He says by supporting insurgency in Afghanistan, China is following the strategic playbook, create trouble for your adversaries. These troubles could keep the U.S. busy so that it doesn't have time and energy to counter China.
The U.S. is basically the only military that's standing in the way of China being able to expand quite aggressively and globally, entice the United States to stay in Afghanistan because it makes the U.S. look bad, be involved in an intervention abroad, and it also costs the U.S. tremendous amounts of money. Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, these are seen as kind of Middle East quagmires that are getting the U.S. overly involved, overstretched, therefore unavailable to defend Japan, Taiwan, the South China Sea from China's incursions. So,
the U.S. invaded Afghanistan in 2001 following the 9/11 attack. 2 months later, China joined the World Trade Organization and began its explosive growth by doing international trade without following the rules. The argument at the time for China to join was to change the Chinese regime into a more peaceful power through economic engagement.
And really, since 1989, the Tiananmen Square massacre, we should have known that China was going in the wrong direction, and we should have taken rapid steps to isolate them economically, diplomatically, and militarily, but we didn't do so, and now we're paying the price.
He hopes that the next administration will make sure the U.S. is not supporting China's expansion if it remains an aggressive nation. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
The Chinese regime is meddling in foreign business dealings in Hong Kong. This comes as virus superspreaders appear in several cities in China. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more on those updates.
The U.S. Consulate General in Hong Kong is trying to sell its property in the city, but Beijing is blocking its attempts. Hong Kong's government refused to register the transaction, citing diplomatic concerns. Those from financial sectors say the sale will greatly undermine foreign investors' confidence in Hong Kong. The property for sale is the U.S. consulate residence. Hong Kong property developer Han Lun Properties won the bid at a lower than expected price. The transaction was scheduled for last Wednesday but was unable to proceed. That's because the city's government refuses to recognize it as a standard business exchange. A notice from Hong Kong's land registry states that in case the U.S. wants to rent, purchase, or sell property in the city, several procedures must first be fulfilled. Among other requirements, it says the U.S. must send an application to Beijing 60 days in advance, and that written consent is needed before any action can be carried out. Han Lung Properties confirmed the U.S. response, saying they have compiled the relevant obligations and responsibilities. But in the meantime, the obligations should not affect their property rights. The U.S. expressed agreement, saying the transaction is associated with foreign affairs and should be handled accordingly. First, an update on the CCP virus pandemic in China. 2 patients were diagnosed with the new UK-based strain of the virus over the weekend. They were found in the mega city of Shanghai in Guangdong province. Both patients were students living in the UK who returned to China in December. The northern Chinese cities of Shenyang and Dalian also discovered 2 so-called super spreaders, sickened patients who go on to spread the virus to many more people than usual. In Shenyang, 1 super spreader infected at least 21 people. Virus cases were found in all 4 of the clinics she had visited. The facilities have since been closed. The discovery comes after last Wednesday when the whole of Shenyang entered what's called wartime status, similar to a state of emergency in the U.S. Over 8 million citizens there have been put under lockdown. All medical institutions below the city level have stopped accepting outpatients. A video posted to Chinese social media went viral over the weekend. It shows a Shenyang doctor warning the public that the local situation is becoming very serious. Netizens have expressed concerns that he could become the next Dr. Li Wenliang. 1 year ago, Dr. Li from Wuhan shared a warning on social media about the dangers of a never-before-seen, highly contagious virus. But he was quickly silenced by police, who accused him of spreading rumors. He later became infected himself and died of the virus. In the viral video, the doctor from Shenyang warned citizens to stay at home. He says he suspects the virus mutated, is spreading quickly, and that the symptoms are serious.
Don't run around recently. The pandemic is very, very serious now. It's spreading very fast, and the symptoms are very serious. Through nucleic acids test, sometimes the virus cannot be detected for the first time. An old lady was tested 3 or 4 times before the test result come back positive. This old lady has the subtype of the virus that's spreading widely in Europe. I suspect that it's a mutated strain. It's very, very contagious. A patient I took to the hospital day before yesterday saw the doctor in the 8th hospital in the same time period as the old lady. They did not have seen each other, and they did not know each other, but still the patient was infected.
Chinese billionaire Jack Ma is missing. He reportedly hasn't been seen in public for more than 2 months. He isn't even appearing on his own TV show. NTD's Patrick Hayden has the details.
Where's Chinese billionaire Jack Ma? He hasn't been seen in public for more than 2 months and speculation is mounting. He's even missed his own talent show, Africa Business Heroes, which is styled like the Apprentice TV show. He was supposed to be part of a judging panel in the November final. Instead, an Alibaba executive replaced him and his picture was removed from the show's website. A spokesman said he missed it because of a scheduling conflict. It comes after Ma gave a speech in October criticizing China's regulation system for stifling innovation. Just over a week later, Ma's IPO for his company Ant Group, which was set to be the biggest IPO ever at $37 billion, was suspended from the Shanghai Stock Exchange. The exchange said it was because Ant Group reported significant issues like changes in the regulatory environment. Then in December, Chinese authorities told Ant Group to restructure its operations. They also launched an anti-monopoly probe into Alibaba. Although Jack Ma stepped down as the company chairman in 2019, he's still one of its largest shareholders. Reporting by Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
And up next, South Korea considers whether it should still send its vice foreign minister on a visit to Iran. That's after Iranian forces detained a South Korean tanker. And the UK records more than 50,000 new cases of CCP virus for the 7th day in a row. The government is under huge pressure to impose tougher restrictions immediately. Find out more when we come back.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas